Hey, fuckers. So, I've gone back and forth on what to talk about this week. The original plan was starting dating in dystopia, you know, lightening up, talking about my disasters, asking for your DMs to share your own stories as the new co hosts of that program. But other issues call and will not be swept under the rug. So, we will get to that soon. We will do a hard show again today, and a much, much easier exercise episode is planned this weekend if you are so subscribed. Now, this is a nuanced episode. We're going to cover a lot. We're going to back way up. We're going to have a quite holistic conversation describing a problem and an emotional process, inner work, and the outcome of it. First, a disclaimer. We're going to talk about the realities of being a mental health prof and podcaster while having a life that isn't mentally healthy. I am your average American plus complex trauma, so all of my work comes from keeping myself steady in highly unstable and hilariously unfortunate conditions. I'm saying I teach trauma recovery because I live through it daily. I often feel, though, as if I'm not allowed to have this dichotomy, but I do. And I can speak about it without my words being indicative of crises. I do appreciate any offers, but I'm not asking for care. I feel awful when people feel like I'm asking them to subscribe to emotionally hold me. I'm here to share what I've learned and to relate. That's all I strive for. And because of all this, these days I've been having a hard time describing the place that I've been in. I'm genuinely feeling self loathe after years of being unable to. But the means to get there are not good. They've not been shiny or bright, and I'm guessing that they're not easy to hear about for most people. So, this one isn't for everybody. If you're in a high alert state already, just go ahead and turn this one off, okay? We'll meet back up here next time. We're going to acknowledge my dark side today, which is where most of my progress comes from that you hear about on this show. So, last time, I think I was rather ineffective in communicating this whole message. I've linked to the pertinent episodes. I gave more thought to what I was trying to describe after assuming we'd all just get it. Because I've talked about my love relationship with fear and catastrophic thinking before in the past, but that was a silly assumption. People don't like to hear dark things when the subject is still, to some degree, in those dark things, because there's nothing but unfixable pain in that. It's much better to get the buttoned up story at the end, rather than having to empathize with suffering and uncertainty that is continuing. So, apologies for being too forthcoming with the uncomfortable bits the other day without warning. And now I'm going to back up and reapproach this more positively with the results of the hardship. The fact is, it is probably easy to imagine that living a life in the woods has been a free flowing, relaxing, easeful, self luxuriating experience. It has not been, and I've been really upset that I haven't had a better time, that I couldn't appreciate all that I have, some degree of freedom in nature, and make the most of the experience. I've simply not been able to live the way that I've wanted to, feeling self-embodied for years. And now, rather suddenly, although all the pieces have been slowly gathering for the past many months, I've finally re-gotten into the state that I've always imagined living and have successfully done before. A flow of writing and drawing and painting, reading every day, maybe multiple of those things. On a great day, all of them. Even getting around to yoga and meditating, hanging out in nature, listening to the wind, appreciating the color of the sky. all of these beloved activities, all these things that I know I want to do, but could not for years, have easily found their way into my daily cycle in these recent times. It has been so relieving and fulfilling and insightful. It feels like being me again. It feels natural. And yet I wasn't doing any of this for a painfully long time when I couldn't make myself calm down, feel okay, feel anything, or find enjoyment in any of my hobbies. Living death. Despite working every day this past year, I still found myself with hours of absolute nothingness, emptiness. So, what was going wrong? Well, the past few years have been characterized by the words suffering, misery, and fear for myself. If you listen back to the episodes, I think you'll catch those. And that describes my relationship with time. Any free time that I had was not actually free time available for my creative hobbies or presence, awareness of self on planet. All of my time was already filled with ruminating and vigilance from the suffering, misery, and fear, which also seemed to be pointed at time itself due to that quality of time, meaning I continually centered around time, always aware, always trying to get through it as though I was being monitored by a micromanaging boss, always staying busy, despite also feeling paralyzed. I could never settle down to do an activity because my head was screaming constantly. My skin felt like eyes or flames were on it at all times, continually aware of that time, continually feeling cut and sliced by the existence of it. What time is it? No matter the answer, the result was evisceration, stress, panic about the time, about filling the time, about using the time right, about me in the time, about what times were coming. And trust, this isn't coming from a lacking in organization place. I'm a super time aware person, unfortunately. I do not get lost in it. I even wake up before alarms if I bother to set them. I have like a pace-keeping force in my chest, which can become punishing. And it did. So that I just wanted time to go away, which meant I had to go away whenever I had it, which is the definition of being alive. The only thing I've really had has been time. So this meant that I would disassociate and try to fade away into nothing whenever I could, instead of having a real life or doing anything that I enjoyed. Often I was disappearing from Earth, uncomfortably trying to sleep, going to bed early, exhausted, but then having panic attacks instead of drifting off, or while drifting off, actually. And I couldn't figure out why. Why was this time so difficult? Why would nothing work? What was so painful? What was I so scared of? Emotional blackout. I mean, I had plenty of guesses, and that is where things get complicated because they're all logical and they're all related in a sticky net in my mind. There's the state of the world, the family disaster, which is, my dad dying, my mom revealing herself as a puppet master, the house renovation destruction and fail betrayal with my brothers, the broken relationships and no contact order with all of them. From 2020 to today, there's being alone almost all of the time, struggling to find people and moving so often that even when I do, all right, off I go again. I know this is going to sound dramatic, but there's also just been the onslaught of almost everything going wrong for several years in the tiniest ways up to rather meaningful ones. And it kind of feels like a practical joke that never ends. So, I've had plenty of things to grumble, ache, and stress about, even if some of them were losing their importance and being worked through, they were still there. But these were intellectual, mentalized thoughts. I must be sad, miserable, suffering because blank. I'm probably very upset because blank. I didn't feel the answers from a bottom up direction, is what I'm saying. I thought, assessed, hypothesized the answers top down because I couldn't be in my body to feel anything to get the answers because of the aforementioned suffering, misery, and fear. Stress, not sleeping, grief, physical pain, constant work, pushing massive stones up downward escalators. You know the drill by now. It pushes you out of your meat jacket when being alive feels like being electrocuted. So my body went into purgatory. Living enough, but vacant, only half cared for to keep it moving. And all I was left with was my stupid fucking brain to try to get by with, which is a very, very bad position for someone like myself to be in, because my brain is smart, but it is not wise. It's lacking in insight a good deal of the time. It gets stuck. It's very all or nothing. Moderation. No, thank you. It jumps to conclusions and thinks it must be correct because variables add up, and then runs through the math over and over again, checking every equation just to be sure. All of that nonsense work also keeps me further away from my feelings, so the real answer from the wise emotional place about what is going wrong cannot come. That is what happened here. It's why I was stuck for so long, unable to bounce back like I always do. And I became a weird, I don't know, 10% version of self because my real accumulated emotions were under my fear. So I would try to do inner work, to sit with the suffering and misery, with my discontentedness. But instead, I would hit the yikes barrier of lingering fear, tap it like a spring, get instantly flooded, go, oh shit, nah, cannot handle any of that right now, not with everything else that I'm dealing with, and then bounce away from it, distracting myself to avoid the scaries and never getting through it to get down to the rest of the feelings, re-abandoning my body, leaving myself stuck in that state of unhappiness, of dis-ease. And then a small dating in dystopia crossover. The relationship wall breaker. A boy got me. Got me feeling. First in a positive way, then in a very negative one. You can guess. So it took me a fair amount of pain and relational fear breaking through those emotional walls to find my way back to feeling. Enough emotional hurt bundled together with panic cracked the door open. Thanks, returning to dating. You got me to hurt enough that I finally felt. But no, really, it is a positive thing. Inner work around why I'm codependent came up quickly, and I busted the rest of the complex because I didn't only feel sad when the thing faded with the guy. I felt fear and then got to explore what the hell is this about? Turns out I had been making up a story about this boy, and now, quote, losing the relationship, yeah, right, meant that I lost hope, lost things that I had imagined. Warning, it's about to get a little darker in here. Ready? I lost some flimsy, idealistic, naive sense of safety that was connected to the budding relationship because I thought maybe I wouldn't be alone through the end of the world after all. I finally felt like maybe I had backup, had any life support, and then it was gone, and I was alone again. Yeah, there's the fear and devastation that was lurking. Yeah, talk about chest tightening. What a breakthrough. So I took the opportunity to be kind of ripped open. I sat in my car, I stared at trees, and flung that emotional door open with as many sad, unprocessed recollections as I possibly could while I had the chance. Feeling through the last several years, connecting subconscious whispers to explicit thoughts, using the sensations in my gut and brain spotting to guide the way. Side note, that shit does work. I've released an episode about it before, and I do want to recommend it. I like to find some tree scenery and then let myself stare at places organically while I'm doing emotional work. There are certain eye position hot spots that you'll find you linger on. So I recommend it. Again, that was brain spotting. Anyways, in December, especially around the holidays, which I didn't get off, but I was very alone for. I spent a lot of time doing this, venturing to a trail, walking, and then sitting and feeling terrible while the world had very happy family times. You know, on purpose because it felt awesome in the actual definition of the word, not the like radical version. It was not cool, it was humbling and overpowering, a reminder of how small and unimportant I am in the face of my feelings. Another side note, have I ever mentioned how many and how large my feelings are? No fucking wonder that I block them out when I am busy. I feel like I'm a highly sensitive seismic sensor inside of a meat body, reacting to vibes indetectable by other senses. Yeah. Of course, I shut that out to function. It is a lot to hold, even on a good day. Back to the story. After the years of theoretical pain, experiencing it, actually feeling it all was like a return home. But there's a caveat. I don't come from a very good home. Unfortunately, hard feelings are the foundational lens to my experience. So many of those things that I feel are quite deep, low, aching by default. As I've regularly said, life is a travesty, and also it's wondrously beautiful. Both kind of hurt to me, and I don't know, that's my experience. That's my outlook. Sad and moody, always have been. And then I kind of come through and sprinkle the joy on top without losing sight of the devastating nature of being alive. Like I said, I understand I am a dichotomy that not everyone is able to comprehend. And all of this was a lot to walk back into. But to come back to those feelings felt like waking up to my own life, which was still ongoing while I had been absent. As I've described before, after a prolonged trauma state, I snapped back into my existence, into myself, bewildered about where I had been for so long. Oh, yeah, bummed out and scared, but ignoring all of it to keep functioning. Always keep functioning. And through this experience of learning to feel so much again around 2019 to 2021, then shutting it all down 2022 to present, and refinding it all once again, waiting to bowl me over, I found the fear cap. It was actually less of the suffering and misery that I presumed were driving my already dead while still breathing life of numbness and existential dread, but I was wrong. It was primarily the fear that I wasn't feeling fully that was torturing me. Fear acted as this cap and blocked out access to other feelings. Fear kept me from sleeping at night. Fear kept me running through every task, every day. Another side note. You know when you have an insanely overbooked day of grave importance? You wake up, keyed up, aware of what has to be done, although you want to do exactly none of it, and have this pervading sense of dread and urgency through every second of being awake. Are you ready for it? For all of the things you need to go do? No, but you must go now. How can I say in a way that anyone will believe? That is how I have felt every second of every day for years. Amped up, not with anxiety, with fear. Fear of what? Again, plenty of guesses, and I have been wagering all of them inside all of this time. Fear of being alone in society was the top contender, though, and I understand how I got pretty distracted focusing on that. As I stated in the last episodes, linked here, which I think concerned some people because I stated it very poorly. The real fear, the thing driving my trauma reacting, was living a life that isn't reflective of the reality that we're in, and wasting time living in devotion to the false idol sold to us by capitalism that I don't even believe in. That is what I ultimately needed to confront. That's what I was trying to soothe with this rapid relationship that busted apart as they do. That is what was blocking out the rest of my life experience. And I had to dive into it to come back out after years of doing anything I could to avoid that action. So, all right, fuckers. This is where we transition to the harder talk, confronting catastrophic thoughts by going into them. This is your warning. Please stop listening now if you're not into dark venturing today. Here's about a 5-second pause to give you a chance to find your phone. The catastrophic process. The real fear that I had is living like I have 60 more years to grind through, when in reality, I might have very few. Okay, this will sound dramatic and horrible. Fear-mongering if you're not ready for it. But again, we're working in worst-case scenario playthroughs and leaning into catastrophic predictions to find the reality of any of them. If fear wants to be heard, let's hear it. Mold it into a realistic form that we can use and adapt thoughts to match the reasonable, fearful potential so we can move on instead of trying to keep pushing it away and living under its influence. Okay, so let's go through it and ask what now, starting with the worst things we can think of. Let's say the government is about to wage a new world war and develop a full police state inside the nation. Some flavor of abusing, abolishing, and enslaving the population can probably be imagined. I don't know. Get creative. Civil war, nuclear war, health crises, food shortages. You dream up your version of dystopia. Mine looks something like The Handmaid's Tale crossed with The Road. If these things happen, then what? If semi-youthful death is imminent for me, then I want to be throwing a parade, not toiling in the name of a life that I was never going to be able to live anyways. And if these things happen, a semi-youthful death most likely is imminent for me personally, because I'm not one to sit back and slowly suffer. I'm a bit too fiery for fading out. And also, my body is so dumb that if there are ever food chain disruptions, I am probably fucked. And also, if I get sick, I have no one to help me. So, okay, just being logical. Um, in the worst case scenarios, I don't think I'm going to be stuck as one of the lone survivors of a nuclear fallout or an enslaved population or a mass sickness event. I will not be starring in that movie. I am not Will Smith, which that alone actually cuts out a lot of the fear for me. When I started going through this, I sat with these potential events and the thoughts and feelings of youngish, soonish death and what it all means about life now in the day to day, currently, I found relief in the simplicity of it all, the clarity that, as I stated, it brought. Because no, it's not ideal. I don't desire mass suffering or personally to be snuffed out, but at least to me, as far as personal outcomes go, it's not the scariest thing. Staying alive in a hybrid of this world and the assumed pending one is. And that is what I was really thinking and suffering and misering and fearing about, but not seeing it fully to dispel it because it was too frightening to confront, too overwhelming in my conditions. The fear cap kept me out. Here's what I mean. Rather than fully confronting what we just did, was half acknowledging the potential reality, but then kind of translating it into today's terms. This same capitalistic hellscape that I also hate, but then more outwardly violent and tainted by shortages, infrastructure crumbling, the government taking our resources, etc. So that the future I was dreaming up appeared to be me alone forever, continually poorer, continually sicker, continually working, but in such immense pain and suffering, it sounds like the honest definition of the word torture. Without confronting my fear, my mind was created a story of me anyways, in a more extreme cage than the one we live in now, which was ramped up by society falling as I lived into old age, destitute and alone. The confines of today, with some doomsday sci-fi stank on them, was the nightmare that my brain was secretly playing in the back of my skull. When, again, that won't happen. I'm a spitfire. I won't stay quiet to make it that long. I'll definitely be fighting for other people to keep living. And I'm not important enough to keep. That long life of containment and abuse is not a valid fear or outlook on the future. And realizing that is freeing for me, because for me, as we discussed, time is scary. Time is the experience of unending pain, suffering, and ultimately pointless doing. Actually, that's just how I was living in 2025 and a few years before. Then my brain took that, extrapolated and extremized that experience about 10,000 fold, added a crumbling scenic background for the next 70 years, and said that's what we have to look forward to, instead of confronting what was scaring me most. Again, living a miserable life when I actually have a very short amount of time to do so. And meanwhile, the thing that I could most predictably, reasonably fear, an early-ish, youngish death, doesn't sound so bad anymore. Here comes some more darkness. Number one, because I'm not afraid of death. I like sitting with thoughts of it. It's comforting for me to know that it's a sure thing, and I can't wait to sleep so hard before the next life turn. Number two, because I've also always assumed that I would die young. In my 30s, I started to get pretty nervous about being stuck on this ride for too long. And number three, because considering that demise could be sooner than originally anticipated, it reframes what time there is now. And that is the most important point. That is the freedom. Hey, if this is happening, my worst realistic fear is early doom due to our government exploding the world, socially or literally. Then I don't have so much to worry about. Working 60 hours a week isn't going to help me, now or in the long run. I don't need to be punished for my time being unproductive. There's nothing that I'm not doing right now, tomorrow, or next Tuesday that is holding me back from the life I want to live. Maybe I'm just not going to get the chance to live that life all the way. The path isn't available because the world has changed. My dreams were built on a future that none of us will see. Maybe. Again, dark. Sorry. And again, this is all hypothetical. Lean into the worst case scenario. Get through the fear. that's okay if that's the case. Because, perspective flip, those dreams weren't really my dreams. They were semi mandatory plans built on what I had to do to survive capitalism. They're not what I ever really wanted. They don't speak to me having a good life experience. They speak to what was possible and required. And secondly, if I'm just not going to get the chance to live that life all the way because the world has changed, then I need to reassess what I want to do or expect from myself. I don't have to give up on my dreams. I need to figure out what they ever really have been. I don't have to turn off my feelings to maintain this pace of life. I need to get in touch with them to find more answers, more wisdom. And if I don't have to work all the time to save myself from eating cat food when I'm 60 years old, then I do get to do the things that I like now, despite their outright uselessness in capitalism. I'm not in danger if I do. I'm not being irresponsible. I'm not wasting my energy. I'm not dooming myself. If anyone is setting up my life for failure, it's been an international cohort of evil billionaires. And that means I'm allowed to do things like, you guessed it, paint, draw, and read. Stretch and meditate. Stare at fucking trees. Listen to rivers. Brain spot. Feel. And yes, relate. Writing long ass podcast episodes that are deeply personal. And also to get back to that romance thing. I don't have to be afraid to do these things because they cut into the time to achieve in the old world way. Engaging in them will not make me a destitute failure with a tragic end that I earned for myself. All of that has been a false, assumed but misinterpreted, theoretical feeling and a bunch of assumptions created by, the post capitalistic hellscape we live in, but also by avoiding the real logical fear that society is going to do all of that for me, more likely than I am going to cause negative outcomes onto myself. And if we're being realistic, society already has been doing those things my whole life. That is why we're here talking about fear and not calling it anxiety. I've never been fucking up my own future. I have never been something to fear and micromanage, to dismantle and rebuild to fit better within the confines of our world. Society has been. And I was never going to achieve my goals within this system. A lower class brat from a emotionally and socially retarded family was probably not going to have the life that I started dreaming of back in college. The one sold to us by colleges. It just used to be hidden better. The downward escalators. They used to move more slowly and behind curtains, I think, back when food cost less than minimum wage, so at least you thought you had a chance. If the only thing that can really happen for me is, at best, if we don't go the fascist route, a life of struggling for societal stagnancy, and, at worst, imprisonment before early death, then I guess the real fear is living a dissatisfying life built on these lies that I was never really going to have control or direction over, anyways. Living in illusions, finding out soon, upon that deathbed, that I was wrong and that I had worked and wasted my life away. So, considering all of those fears and what could be real within them, I might as well start to have a good time while I plug away at the things that I can and do things that I enjoy with a reasonable pace that doesn't make me sick. Huh? Why the fuck not live the way that I have wanted to? Why not actually live at all? The adaptive response to the most likely reality of what I'm fearing. And with that trip through fear, and let me be honest, of course, this was a very brief recounting of days and weeks and months and still ongoing work. And it wasn't a casual chat like this going through it. I sat, felt this terror in my body, struggled to breathe, held myself as my heart raced, cried. And I keep doing less dramatic versions of that to today. From it, the fear has become unimaginably easier to sit with, to live with. The emotions are more available and easier to discern. They have meaning again, besides misery and suffering. My energy is kind of coming back. It's much simpler to rebalance when something gets askew. Thoughts much more directable and cleaner. And I don't know how to say, except to say I feel great. Not, like not happy or hopeful, but relieved and full because I am full of feelings. Post terror tripping, I can be in my time, in my body, in my surroundings, and do whatever I want from there, from conscious choice, not automatic, bone deep, painfully uncomfortable all the time, fleeing from fear. I can draw, I can paint, I can write, stretch, meditate, stare at nature. And from all of these things, I can feel self loathe. And I hope that this highly dichotomous journey makes sense. In conclusion, please do not worry about me. My dark thoughts and morose experience of life have always been with me. They've also always been the backbone of this project. They started this project. Sitting back into them somehow launches me forward. It's complicated. It's a lot. And it rightfully makes people uncomfortable and concerned. Well, too bad. Just kidding. But blocking out the darkness, the fear, and corresponding, sorry, one more dark note, appreciation for death blocks out my connection to being alive, blocks out my feelings and the joy that dances across the foundation of travesty. It blocks out my genuine positivity in the face of negative circumstance, which is probably my genuine strength as a mental health potter. You can be okay even when things aren't, but you have to go through the fear, the darkness of potential realities for it to be sincere. Attempting to skip negative affect or high activation levels and be centered anyways, that's toxic positivity. It's something I'm not willing to do anymore because you know, see above conversation. It keeps you living in ways that are inappropriate when compared against the environment. Living in ways, for me, that are closer to non existence. Instead, go through the fear, get to the bottom of the well, and then ask, okay, so now what? And find the positive possibility and freedom of choice that exists within. The destruction of old cages, the potential in their wake. And as far as I'm concerned, if we are stuck on this ship and it's sinking, we might as well have a parade. That's Frank Turner. We might as well live. We might as well feel. So we're just going to have to journey into the hard shit to get to the other side. Cheers, fuckers. I worked really, really hard on this episode, and I hope that it shows and it helps. Check out the upcoming exercise episode for a much, much easier round of inner work. Take care out there, hail yourself, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.